Salut mes amis. Today we are going to talk about what it is actually like to live in Paris.
Paris is known as the city of lights and the city of love, and it is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful cities, if not the most beautiful city in the world. One of the things that Paris is known for, of course, is its absolutely stunning architecture.
I mean, look at this.
At certain times, the city is just breathtaking. When I take Sam to the park in the morning, and by the way, early in the morning is the best time to experience Paris. The city definitely has a different circadian rhythm, with most Parisians getting up a bit later and staying up way past my bedtime. And early in the morning, the streets, the parks will be almost completely empty, aside from the occasional jogger or dog walker. And often, especially early in the mornings, the sun will hit these stunning buildings or the Eiffel Tower just right, and the beauty of it takes my breath away. But it is not just the stunning architecture. The Seine winding its way through the heart of Paris and countless green spaces is what make Paris absolutely gorgeous. There's definitely a very unique energy and charm to this place, unlike any other city I have ever been to. And of course, on top of an abundance of visual beauty, Paris has a ton to offer when it comes to entertainment. Countless museums, as well as theaters, some great, if not inexpensive shopping. There is always a sporting event, a concert, or some other event going on. And if the matter protested is dear to your heart, you can always join Parisians in what seems to be one of their favorite pastime activities, protesting. Parisians definitely take their right to protest quite seriously. And of course, Paris is known for its many street cafes. And its cuisine. However, it is not just delicious French cuisine you can experience when living in Paris, but really incredible food from all around the world. Now, even if you have dietary restrictions, like myself, I eat a vegan diet, I think Paris is one of the easiest places in the world to be vegan. There are some incredible vegan restaurants in this city, and I don't ever feel as if I'm missing out on experiencing French cuisine, because some of these restaurants actually just veganize French cuisine, and it is incredibly delicious. So being vegan or vegetarian here, or having any sort of dietary restrictions, is quite easy, and you can get incredible French cuisine and really amazing food from all around the world. So the city definitely has a ton to offer. But one of the biggest challenges I personally have with living in Paris is that it is so far away from real nature. There are countless green spaces and parks in the city, for which I'm very grateful for, but of course, none of them are the ocean or the mountains. And having lived in California for half of my life, I got a bit spoiled. So for me personally, that is one of the biggest challenges, is being so far away from real nature. It is quite easy to travel in and out of Paris, but of course it takes a bit of time. I can't just get out of my house and go for a hike or go to the ocean. And as gorgeous as the city is, unfortunately, it is not the cleanest. This is because of a combination of things. First off, Parisians don't seem to think much of letting their dog take a huge poop in the middle of the sidewalk and then just walk away. There is definitely a bit of an attitude here in Paris, and if you're Parisian, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel there's an attitude here in Paris of, this is not my responsibility. So if you happen to step into my dog's poop, not my fault, not my responsibility. Now, the city is supposedly fining people not cleaning up after the dogs, but honestly, I have never seen it reinforced. And oftentimes when we walk out of our house, It is like a minefield. I will spare you the visual. Another reason the city is not the cleanest is that Parisians smoke cigarettes as if it was the 50s. 35% of French smoke, and as if that wasn't bad enough, they then take their cigarette butts and just throw them wherever they are. So there are cigarette butts all over the city, and French men don't seem to think twice of urinating in public in broad daylight. It is something I come across several times a day. Again, I will spare you the visual, but the city's solution to this public urination problem was to install these open-air street urinals, which of course provoked a protest by feminist protesters, labeling them sexist and discriminatory. And I have to say, being out and about in Paris, especially as a woman, it can be quite challenging to relieve our bladders because there's definitely a lack of public toilets. If there are public toilets, they're usually not the cleanest, and it is quite common for French toilets to not have a toilet seat. So if you can find a public toilet, it is usually not that inviting. Now, another reason why Paris is not as clean as it could be is, of course, because of the countless tourists coming to visit Paris on a daily basis. When I take Sam to the park in the morning, especially in summer and on the weekends, oftentimes the grass in front of the Eiffel Tower would just be completely filled with bottles and other trash left behind by mostly tourists who had a great time the night before. However, usually within an hour, city workers, unless they are on strike, which happens quite frequently, but usually within an hour, city workers do an incredible job cleaning up all that mess. So while Paris is not the cleanest, the city does an incredible job cleaning up. And even the minefields on the sidewalks, about once a week or so, a truck will come by and spray down the streets and sidewalks with some soapy water, getting rid of the pee and poop, at least temporarily. Now, you can imagine, because of this trash problem Paris has, there are a ton of rats in Paris. In fact, it is estimated that these little guys are outnumbering humans 2 to 1, making it about 4 million rats. And who can blame these little guys for wanting to live here? They have plenty to eat. And of course, you can imagine the city not always smelling its best. But it is not just disgusting smells you get ambushed with when living in Paris. Early spring, certain parts of the city smell like lilac, which is incredible. Right now, certain parts of the city, so sort of late spring, early summer, certain parts of the city smell like jasmine. And you can go down a street and within 30 seconds smell anything from the tempting aroma of fresh baked pastries to the beautiful scent of a flower shop, the not so nice scent of a fish shop or cheese shop, a delicious cooking scent coming from a restaurant, and who knows what else. So Paris can be quite overwhelming to one's nose as well as other senses, because unfortunately, like probably most big cities, Paris is not a quiet city. With a city as old as Paris, there is of course a ton of renovation as well as construction, and I don't know if I ever sat down to make a video without some sort of construction noise in the background. On top of that, there's a ton of traffic noise. Lots and lots of motorcycles, which personally I find the most obnoxious because to me they sound so violent. Lots of sirens. Lots of sirens. And as stunning as these buildings are, apartment buildings and individual apartments are usually quite loud as well. The walls are basically like paper. And aside from hearing construction noise, basically all day long, you can usually hear somebody walking or talking above you, children screaming, somebody playing the piano, not that well, somebody having a party till 5 in the morning, which happens quite frequently, somebody throwing out their trash right in front of your window. I can't tell you how many times I sit here when making a video and just wait for the noise to stop so I can continue filming. So because the city is quite loud, it is almost impossible to open your windows and enjoy some fresh air, which unfortunately is not that fresh to begin with, since Paris, like probably most big cities, has a major air pollution problem. The air quality here is usually between deteriorated and poor, with the occasional moderate on a good day. So having a major air pollution problem is something else that is not that romantic about Paris. Now, it is a bit of a bummer that you cannot leave your window open for an extended period of time, especially right now in summer, because most Parisian apartments do not have air conditioning. The French supposedly believe that air conditioning should be avoided and discouraged at all cost. And talking about heat, my favorite month to be in Paris is August. While it might be a bit hot, most Parisians leave the city for the month of August, probably because they want to be somewhere with air conditioning. So the city and the streets are nice and empty. Now, talking about apartments, quite a few of you wanted to know what a place like ours would go for as far as rent or to buy. And by the way, if you have not seen my apartment tour, I will link it down below. Now, while I cannot tell you the exact price of this particular apartment because it is covered by my husband's work and we are lucky enough to never see a bill, but when we lived here before, so we lived in Paris from 2016 to 2018, we rented a similar sized place in the same arrondissement. We live in the 7th, and it was 4,500 euros a month. That is a lot of money, and I'm sure it's even more expensive now. So real estate and rent are quite high in Paris, and the average price to buy a place here in Paris is between 1,000 and 1,500 euros per square foot, which is pretty close to real estate prices in New York City. Now, my husband and I love walking past real estate agencies to see what they are offering in the windows. And it is incredible the kind of places you can rent or buy here in Paris. Anything, of course, from the picture-perfect Parisian apartment to the tiniest yet not cheap place you have ever seen.
So that's 1.65 million.
Yeah, so that one's about 1,500 euros per square foot.
It's pretty.
This one here is 360 square feet for $824,000, but it's in a kind of townhouse, so you get a premium for that. And it's 1 to 2 rooms, which means it's basically a studio.
For 800,000.
For 800,000. So that one's a garage space, which is under contract. It's 63,000 for your own parking space in central Paris.
Just for parking. But then it's yours.
Then it's yours. Then you got parking forever. There you go. 300 square feet for about $500,000. 310 square feet. Skimp.
So this one is 1,500 square feet for 6,800 a month. Got one of those old-fashioned bathtubs, but it is 6,800 a month for 3 rooms.
And of course, on top of real estate, cost of living in general is quite high in Paris. Food, parking, none of it is cheap, and parking is quite difficult to come by here in Paris. Many Parisians, us included, don't own a car. The city is quite walkable, which is one of the things I love about Paris. And whatever is too far to walk, you can bike, scooter, Uber, take a metro, a bus. In fact, Parisians get quite creative when it comes to commuting. And since most things are done on foot, grocery shopping here is quite different than, let's say, the United States. Whereas my husband used to go to Costco in the US about once a month or so and stock up, here grocery shopping is done almost daily and everything has to be carried home. Now, the high cost of living might be one of the reasons why Paris has such a homeless problem. It breaks my heart walking through the streets of Paris and seeing these poor souls. Many of them have taken up semi-permanent residence on public streets or public property. And I have talked to Parisians about this and was told that there are programs in place to help, but that many don't want the help. I don't know to what extent that is true, And I'm sure alcohol, drug abuse, and mental illness play a role. But it breaks my heart to live in a city where you can go to Bon Marché and pay $100 for a bottle of water to see people sleeping in the street. Now, because of that, of course, there's quite a bit of begging. And seeing both the homelessness and begging can be quite heartbreaking, or it might be tempting to just put on your blinders. And then, of course, there's also quite a bit of pickpocketing and some petty crime. Now, luckily, knock on wood, nothing has ever happened to me, but occasionally I see the empty purse thrown in the bushes. So it does happen. And if you're on the metro or in crowded places or certain districts, you just have to make sure your purse is nice and tight, and you have to have your wits about you. But like I said, knock on wood, nothing has happened to me so far. Now, one of the things that is surprisingly inexpensive here is healthcare, especially when compared to the US, and even if you're not part of the French healthcare system. I recently had to spend an afternoon in the emergency room at a private hospital here in Paris, the American Hospital, and I had a battery of tests done. I had 2 EKGs, an ultrasound, a very extensive blood test, and I even got a warm lunch. All of it together was 400 euros. In the United States, you would have to put at least a zero behind that. So healthcare here is quite affordable and quite good. Now, let's talk about Parisians. There is, of course, the stereotype of the arrogant, rude Parisian. And while they exist, just like they do in any other city or country in the world, for the most part, Parisians are quite lovely. Now, they are not like Americans. They don't walk around, hey, how's it going? But if you smile at a Parisian, if you say bonjour, vous allez bien, for the most part, they will smile back and try to have a conversation. Now, the language is definitely a barrier for me. I'm trying to learn French, but it is not easy. But if I just try to say something in French, though I have to admit, Parisians don't have the greatest imagination for accents. But if I just try to say something in French, usually Parisians will apologize for their English not being good enough. So Parisians are quite lovely. And if you go into a store or restaurant, there is an unspoken rule that you as the customer have to say bonjour first. If you do so, most likely you will have excellent customer service. If you don't, the customer service might not be so good. So this about sums it up, what it is like to live in Paris, at least for me. And of course, there are definitely pros and cons to living in the city. And I think it's good to know about the pros and cons. When we moved here for the first time in 2016, we moved here with rose-colored glasses on, thinking it would always be romantic and beautiful. And we were in for a rude awakening. And honestly, we didn't like it the first time around. This time, knowing what to expect, we are loving it. Now, I couldn't imagine living in the city for the rest of my life. I would miss nature way too much, and I also tend to get overstimulated at times. So at times, I definitely have to be in the mood for the city, but for the most part, I am loving living here right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If I forgot anything, please add it down below. Any questions or comments, of course, leave them down below. You know, I always love to hear from you. And if you're Parisian or living in Paris, please feel free to weigh in. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, bye.